we segueing into something very different from what we were talking about. Yet we have with us one of leading entrepreneurs in the smart city space, if you like, Michael. And you've done a lot of work around innovative technology breakthroughs. You've been on this journey of smart cities and improving cities with technology. So before we get there, Michael, I'm going to introduce you to the audience. Michael is an impassioned architect, as he would want to be called, an urbanist and an entrepreneur. Michael has founded and led high growth companies in the US and Asia for more than 2 decades. Now, he studied architecture at Yale and Cambridge, earned a Fulbright scholarship, and he's done many things actually, besides all of this. He's also earned and got awarded for in the construction of 40 under 40, and in 2014 was also honored by World City Summit as a young leader in Singapore for his long contribution to improving sustainability and quality of life in cities. I go back a few years with Michael. We continue to exchange notes, and Michael is very passionate. He's a very passionate entrepreneur. He is kind of a leader in what he is attempting to do here. And Michael will, talk more about his organization, which is Cityzenith, and of course, Smart World Pro, which is the digital twin technology. And recently, Michael also, did a white paper in collaboration with many other experts. And Michael will, of course, talk more about that as well. So Michael, without further ado, the stage is yours. And yes.
Well, thank you very much, Deep. It's a pleasure to be here and presenting in this unusual and extraordinary forum alongside some really phenomenal people. And it was wonderful to listen to Arnab talk about the vaccine industry's response, obviously so critically to the COVID crisis. And I'm going to talk about what the building industry has to do in responding to COVID. And we, as Deep mentioned, produced a white paper recently, the title of which was called How Digital Twins, which is a new technology that I will talk about today, can help mitigate the impact of COVID, specifically in the use of buildings and infrastructure worldwide, which we all live, work, and play in every day so critically. So this image in the middle of the screen was part of that white paper that we created. It's kind of an iconic graphic that shows a lot of information attached to a 3D digital model. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is how we can take all this information that's being generated by multiple sources about the virus itself, about things like stockpiles that are of equipment that are essential to addressing the virus, how all these data points come together and can be uniquely analyzed and optimized in this type of technology environment we call digital twinning. So I have a couple of things I'm going to share just slide-wise, and then I'm going to get into a description, I think, of the technology itself and show you a bit more about what exactly a digital twin looks like, and then get into how this really is applied in the case of COVID. Now, I want to say first and foremost that this is a thesis, that we have not yet developed this quote-unquote digital twin use case. So what I did was I went to other digital twin experts from around the world, from Singapore, where they have a digital twin of the entire city, to the UK, where they have a national digital twin program, et cetera, and took the viewpoints of different experts, even the World Economic Forum, in this particular thesis, and the conclusions were really, really interesting. So a little bit about us itself. Cityzenith has been around for about 10 years. We are a digital twin solution provider. Digital twins I'll get to in a second. We've been called everything from SimCity for real cities, to Google Earth on steroids, to my favorite was Minecraft for architects. These are all descriptions of Cityzenith's core Smart World Pro platform, which you see on the monitor there. Essentially, we'll get into what it really is, but digital twins themselves aggregate massive amounts of information into a single information model, and those are used to optimize all kinds of outcomes. This market is growing massively. It was, I think, touched $3.8 billion in 2019, and it's growing at something like 45% a year, which is incredible as a technology trend, just to give you a sense of how popular digital twins are actually becoming. And the word's getting out there these days. This is all things that have been, from the BBC to the Financial Times to TechCrunch, writing about us and our digital twin projects all over the world. This is all new, in the last, I would say, year or so. Deep did give me an introduction. I just want to mention that I am an architect by training, and that's very fundamental to what we do. I started the first several years of my career on a traditional path to be an architect, working for major US practices and ultimately opening those up in Asia. And I then shifted to the technology side of the spectrum in 2004 when I grew a company called Satelier that was invested by Sequoia Capital, the same folks who invested in companies like Oracle and Yahoo and Cisco, et cetera, to develop a BIM services company, a 3D information modeling company. And that became really a transformational experience that led to where we are today. And this trend, I think, is going to continue. They say by 2025, this will be something like a $35 billion global market, which is astounding in terms of access. And potentially, almost every major commercial building will have a digital twin within the same time frame. So digital twins themselves, by definition, are virtual replicas of physical buildings and assets connected to the data in and around them. That's what they are. And they deliver unique value at different phases along the entire life cycle, from design and planning, when architects will use digital twins, to construction, when contractors will use them, onto the operational process, when building owners, property managers, asset managers will also use them. This is all in the context of the building space. So what I wanted to do, yes,
Michael,
please.
I have a question here, just for the layman and just for people to understand. Now, is digital twin in itself a what we would call an exponential technology, or is it founded on some technology?
It's a description. It's a description. Digital twin technology, and I'll describe this in the 2 slides later, kind of comes in a category that is related to 3 other technologies. And there are BIM, GIS, and gaming. I'll describe that in a second. What I thought I would do is take you through just a quick look at what the product looks like in action. And this recent project that we've done in the United Kingdom, but it gives an example of how digital twins are being used to aggregate massive amounts of uncoordinated, disconnected data inside a single smart building. And this will give you the type of, or a kind of perspective into how granular this type of technology can be when aggregating data. The entire model is actually a live data object model. Those objects are connected to databases either from the city or paid services, or in this case, we directly imported 3D models from the architect and converted those into asset models. And then we attach all these information to those models from different systems, control systems, facility systems. We can track the movement throughout the building of people, of objects, of goods, etc. Then we visualize that information, whether those are IoT sensors or humidity, temperatures, readings, control points, etc. All this then gets located where it belongs. A model like this, and then correlated defined efficiencies, so that we have, for example, an alert from a control system that will then send immediate notification to a vendor management system, informing the engineer to come and address the problem. So these digital twins are about taking disconnected data and finding these amazing data correlations and efficiencies to create a whole new world of doing things. And we've been seeing this technology deployed in the manufacturing sector. Here you see the integration of even sales tools like these are called Matterport models or live 3D JPEG models, lease information coming from leasing systems. And you can look forward and backwards in time and look at data. What is the status of leases going to be 3 years from now? And then again, refer back to a dashboard. So we looked at all this type of this massive ability to aggregate and visualize and analyze information. And in the building world, we use this in factories. We see this on construction sites. Digital twins are being used for a whole bunch of things, even security purposes, aggregating things like security feeds from different points inside or outside a building, both public and private feeds into the same model to create a more secure environment. So when you see all these things, you kind of get a sense of the possible. You really can in 2020 aggregate almost any kind of information and analyze that data. And in the building world, this is wildly revolutionary because for all these years, that type of technology has really been in the domain of multiple tools. And so having them as one tool is finally suddenly possible in the realm of digital twinning. Deep, you were talking about other kinds of tools in this space, not to bore the people on the who are listening in, but there are things called building information or 3D modeling tools that the building industry uses, GIS tools, which are basically 2D maps. These are all related tools, but not the same as a true digital twin type of platform. And we began thinking through, the power of this technology. And at a board meeting, it was one of our directors approached me and he said, we really should be thinking about, how we can better address, use our technology to help address, the situation today. And later on that evening, I was listening to New York Governor Cuomo, who impressed me a lot during this crisis. And I continued to watch him for several days after that as he kind of led his state through, the crisis. And they are, as everyone knows, the worst affected state in many ways, the worst affected part of the world. So it occurred to me that he was using slides at the end, to present information, that he had 20 different data points from different places, locations of hospitals, logistics information from vehicles moving things. He didn't know where people were. He knew where hospital beds were. He couldn't, there were all these different data points, and we thought, well, there really should be a kind of digital twin solution to all of this. If they had a digital twin for the city of New York that was granular enough, we could actually aggregate all those data points, run analytics, and actually be able to more successfully address the problem. Knowing where it is, being able to contain it in a 3D environment in advance by being able to study and analyze its progress using tools is a way to contain the spread of the virus without having to shut down an entire economy, for example, because one of the things that economies are struggling with right now is that we don't know exactly where it is or what to do about it, so we shut everything down and throw a big net around everything. And you can see what the economic impact of that is and has been. So we believe that people are never going to use buildings the same way again. We're just not. Get used to things like contactless entry, temperature checks on the way into major buildings, et cetera, sensors that are tracking your movement, logs that will log your personal body temperature every time you go into and out of a building. Get used to all of that. In South Korea, China, and Singapore. Go ahead, Dean,
Michael,
please.
have you been flooded with inquiries? And because what you're sharing seems to be kind of a breakthrough in one sense, because I of course, and we've been generally getting a lot of information. We see a lot of technology, what's going on. You're right, safe buildings, smart campuses. But for you to link this up to containing the pandemic using this whole technology that you have. So, right. So what does it look like for you going forward in terms of leveraging this? And that's what I meant by inquiries.
Well, I think the white paper was published 3 weeks ago. It's been picked up in 29 major media outlets around the world, from Reuters to Asia One to you name it, across Australia. And so there's been a tremendous amount of discussion around this as a subject. The incoming from various parties, from cities who are interested in the solution, to national governments, to building owners asking for more information. It's very widely. When you see who the contributors are in the article, it will make more sense. But yes, I think there's broad interest in figuring out how this can be used.
Sure, yeah. So go on.
So, going on to what we saw happening in Asia to some extent, that I think really impressed me, and I think, to some extent, full disclosure, I am an American. I lived in Asia for 24 years, 4 years in China, 20 years in India, and so roughly half my life between the West and the East. So my perspective is different. You know, I raised my family in Asia. I grew up. I've taken classes in Chinese for 3 years. I've done, you know, and I've visited almost every Indian state in my journeys looking at architecture. My perspective is a bit different. And I have been a believer in Asia's rise since, I would say, roughly the early 90s when I lived in China, and was watching any part of the world grow in the way that it has and mature, and then in many ways now leapfrog, has been fascinating. So this was an example for me of many Asian cities adopting smart city technologies faster than Western and other cities. They were able to deploy those and use some of them, but then repurpose them to hack them into a kind of makeshift digital twin, not a true, like we call it, digital twin, but mobile apps that did this, a 2D map that did that, showed the location of stockpiles, etc. That it's been part of also watching that response and seeing how effective South Korea and Singapore, where we also work, in China, were in responding to this, made us think that information is absolutely key. So we concluded that there are really 3 reasons why 3D digital twins specifically are uniquely helpful in a situation like this. One of them certainly is having a real-time interoperable environment that can aggregate massive amounts of data and can be shareable. A lot of the problems we saw in the hacked response was a lack of shareability between tools and the ability to collaborate data between those tools, which, if they could have done, would, I think, enable an even more robust and sweeping response. Secondly, if you really look at the wisdom of experience in all of this, digital twins are used to tracking the movement of a package from a factory point to via a carrier to the endpoint. They are used to tracking massive amounts of sophisticated moving data from multiple systems, making them the perfect platform to track a virus. Digital twins, 3D ones, track spatial data, and this virus very much is a spatial problem. So knowing where this problem is moving, being able to know that somebody's on the 30th floor who's infected, or somebody is, the spatial analysis becomes essentially critical, and that leads to point 3. These types of open 3D digital twins, like we support, provide limitless data correlation and simulation capabilities. Where is it going next? Will I have enough supplies? Will the logistics be calculated in such a way that we're going to be able to reach our goals? Can we look forward 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? How many different data points can we combine? So we published this white paper, and a wonderful magazine out of New York called Office Insight, that writes a lot of heady pieces about design, picked it up and wrote a wonderful piece, comparing our work with this thesis to the work of Dr. John Snow, who was a 19th century epidemiologist in the UK, famous for deploying groundbreaking statistical graphing methods to predict and actually find out exactly what the location of the original cholera outbreak was, like a water pump somewhere in London. It's amazing work that he did. Now, we don't want to be compared to the work of somebody who did something amazing. We have created a thesis, but what the article did note was that our thesis, 166 years, hasn't changed much. It is just the technology that's changed. It's still about finding out where things are, tracking their movement, isolating them, and then making decisions. What's changed is the technologies that we have around us to make that possible, and hence that's kind of where we are. We had invited a number of folks, as I mentioned, to give perspective, because we have our own, but I thought it would be interesting to gather perspectives from different people. Deep, did you want to comment on this?
No, I was just, I had a question, but you go and.
Absolutely, we're doing well on time, so go ahead.
No worries. So, you've talked about digital twins, and that was key for people to understand that this is a term which is being used and thrown up out there. People are beginning to use this term digital twins. Even in the automobile industry, people talk about it for various reasons. They understand it, right? Now, the point is, you also talked about, and I like the connect you made, and which is very valid, how when you're tracking something from get-go to every point, and even people in buildings on floors, and then how you track this virus, and we don't need to then react or shut down, and we kind of take a very informed decision in that sense, well informed, and the action would be very different, of course, right? Not so radical, maybe. While radical collaborations are good, but I'm not sure if radical solutions are always good, but that's another topic, right? Now, the point here is, the question was, what will a future now, of connected digital communities, cities, countries, and the world really mean for people, Michael?
Steve, you're always ahead of me. That's 3 slides away.
So I'm an R1 actually, and I've not done your whole brain profiling, but seems like you're an R1 because I know you from the past, and you're a very Imagineer, strategist kind of person. That's an R1, a very right-brained.
I'm about to plow into exactly what I think where we're headed with all of this. And
okay, so I wasn't privy to your slides, so it was just I don't know.
That was very intuitive. That's exactly where we're headed, and we are headed towards a world of network digital twins. I'll explain that in a second.
Sure.
The individuals that we invited here included Neil Thompson from the UK's Digital Twin Working Group. As I mentioned, the UK has a national program, and he likes to break things down and said really it's all about getting the right information to the right people at the right time. And really, actually, that's true, absolutely true. And Terence Tan himself was, if those of you who are familiar, Singapore has a very widely publicized 3D digital twin project called Virtual Singapore. He was one of the lead people on that. And one of the key points that Terence made is that digital twins actually allow now for people information to be incorporated into the building information, so you can really analyze now the impact of one on the other. And COVID was kind of the impetus to kind of push those 2 things together, because prior to that, digital twins were more about assets. And so very interesting comments you made. Tom Shercliffe is one of the world's leading smart building experts. He was the one who really walked me through in the article and said, here are all the actual on the ground changes to buildings, contactless entry, he gave us a whole bunch of different things to expect down what we call prop tech pipeline that will change the way in which buildings are used. And Peter Ciala, he was is the CEO of a company called Delos, and they basically sponsor the the wellness building standard in the world. And his valid contribution was that health data over the last few years has become more important than ever to the concerns of building owners and their priorities, and now it's even going to be more. As tenants will want to say, I'm not going to move into your space until I know that it's COVID safe. How do you guarantee me that? And that's where digital twins again will come into helping to kind of solve that issue. I'll kind of quickly wrap up with these couple of folks. Greg from the World Economic Forum really saw this kind of digital twins as connecting all the civic data. What's been missing is that they've all been very property based, but now you can kind of pull all the data together to really provide a single platform to the entire populace, as it were. And Jagan Shah, one of my dear friends, was a former director in Delhi of the National Institute of Urban Affairs, believes that especially large countries like India need a platform where they can track all of this, and it becomes more and more, I think.
Yeah, I was going to get there. I was. Yeah, so, what's really happening, and Amravati, I think you spoke about.
Exactly. In fact, when we won the Amravati digital twin contract in South India for that new capital city, one of their key concerns was being able to provide information uniformly at scale to any citizen who wanted it. I mean, this is pre-COVID, mind you. So again, I'll end with this and then take questions perhaps. I think, Deep, as you very astutely predicted, the world is moving towards a brave new future of networked digital twins, in my view. We went from making all of our drawings in 2D on paper to making them in CAD, which was the first attempt at computer-aided design, to now everything is mandated in 3D. Digital twins will just help make that happen at scale. Crises like these, like the coronavirus, will accelerate the adoption of these types of technologies as the world moves from where we are today towards digitalization and virtualization generally. Digital twins will pave that path for the movement towards virtualization in the building industry, there's no doubt. I think we predict that the big users are going to be, of course, owners, tenants, shareholders, insurers, facilities users, energy companies, majorly, et cetera, et cetera. So I conclude with the following, and the take-home thesis, if you will,
Yeah.
that if this is the emergency that forces the world to adopt some type of shared data platform at scale, it will also be the same platform that later on will help the world deal with climate change. Climate change is also fundamentally really an engineering problem and a data problem. As it later on becomes a policy problem and other things. The lack of a shared common platform, common standards in addressing those types of issues are every bit as severe as they are in sharing medical information and building information. So, the hope is that in, of course, the big blue bright ocean world, that this type of technology would be deployed, would be used for this purpose, and then repurposed for even greater mass collaboration efforts like addressing climate change. I'll pause there. That's my 25 minutes, Steve.
Yeah, so just a few things that surfaced in my mind, and a few questions here. Now the point is, you touched upon a point that basically it's going to be technology. It's a technology issue. You said climate change, and I kind of agree. I was of a different school of thought some years ago that basically it's a human issue. Humans need to change their mindsets, lifestyle, and especially after COVID, many people, there's a lot of noise out there about how humans have cut their own throat in one sense. It's because of their lifestyles, their value systems, and all that they do, their actions, which lead to such pandemics. While there could be half truth in that or full truth in that, we still don't know. But the point is, Michael, how do you stop humans from being humans? That's my point. How do you stop? Because there's huge, the 6-7 billion people. You don't expect them to lead a certain type of lifestyle which will really affect the climate in a positive way, or they will continue to do what they want to do, whether they want to litter, whether they want to be more of a consumers, own more cars, run more cars. Finally, it does come to technology. Then, how do humans stretch themselves to safeguard and neutralize all the wrong also that humans do? So it's kind of a dichotomy. In one sense.
It is. You hope that issues like COVID right now, we read a lot.
So you want to stop sharing the slides, so
yes.
It could be more kind of visible to the audience. Yeah, there you go.
You hope situations like COVID can help things change. You hope that it can bring about fundamental change. I think that's quite possible. When you kind of reevaluate, cities right now are saying we don't want to reopen the same way. We want more pedestrian space. We want more of this. We want more of that. Let's not reopen the same way now that we have an opportunity to change. I think that's these types of situations create those moments for great transformation too, right? And ultimately, as you mentioned, I agree. Yes, climate change is an engineering problem. It's also an economic model problem. At some point, the world needs to develop an economic model that rewards conservation rather than consumption. And until that happens, we're going to continue to consume, and we're going to continue to compete to consume. When we start competing to conserve, things will change. And we need forward-thinking charter countries, charter cities, charter districts to start leading with those models to show us all how to do it. We're not on the right path with that right now. So.
Or Michael, maybe a longer run of a pandemic like this, where things don't come back to normal very fast, where people have stopped buying cars for almost 3-4 months.
Or flying planes.
They're flying, but there's no automobile sales happening. Retailers, they are really people are not buying clothes, they're just buying grocery. They're stacking grocery, not clothes. They're not going buying shoes. So that could be that, if this were to happen for a longer term, people kind of give very much indeed for taking and making this time. It's been very informative, not just for me. I've been hanging around with you. We talk often now and then. So I pretty much know, as a lot of your world. Yet for the viewers and the audience, Michael, this was almost an eye-opener, because for anyone to kind of think, okay, how does this really kind of contain, or, how does this address the problem out there, the crisis? And you explained it really well. You connected the dots. And we talked about the future. And thanks a lot, very informative. So Michael, we may have inquiries because we always open it up, and we invite inquiries, if people want to get in touch, because they could be entrepreneurs out there who are watching our shows. They are, academicians watching this show. They're watching you all online. So we will keep in touch. We will, if something comes our way, we are going to, shoot it off to you. And anything else, Michael, that you want to share? Okay, Michael's gone off.
I'm back. Yeah, no, I'm great. Thank you for this opportunity. It was wonderful to share this work and to listen to the wonderful work that Arnab is doing. And I look forward to hearing about Asha's work.